Lots of progress on the Corvette. So the whole interior is back together. We ended up putting in our new AC evaporator, which you can see the fittings coming out right here. What I ended up doing was using gasket maker all along the inside of this seam, and then I screwed it right back together with the factory gaskets. This is our new heater core. The tubes were actually touching this, so it would have been impossible to put the hoses on. So I just stuck a pry bar in there and bent the tubes out a little bit. As far as sealant, the new heater core came with some foam. That's what this is. I cut holes in the foam and taped it onto here so that there would be no air gap there. And I actually did the same thing here, and on the inside of the evaporator core, I used the former gasket and a combination of that new foam and the original gasket, and kind of glued together a gasket around the outside perimeter of our AC evaporator. So this way, this AC should blow cold. There shouldn't be any air leaks causing inefficiencies. So now we're at the point where I ended up switching over our fittings to our R134 fittings. It turns out on the high pressure port, I didn't even need to switch it over. I don't know what was up. As a matter of fact, the switchover one didn't fit. I had to put the original one back. On the low pressure port, I did have to switch it over. And then I used our little Amazon rotary vane vacuum pump to pull some vacuum on the AC system. Real quick summary on how that's done. Very, very simple. You hook up your high side, hook up your low side. You know, they're color coded. They go right with the ports. Real simple. You open your valves, both there and here, so that you are able to provide suction through here and then into your vacuum hose, which goes down to your pump. That's the yellow hose. So all valves open. You go ahead and turn on your pump, and you see your gauge slowly drop down to negative 30 inches. Once you're at negative 30, that is 30 inches of mercury, by the way. Some people will ask, if you're talking inches water, inches mercury, and it makes a huge difference. Anyways, now we have a vacuum on it. I've had this system open, sitting in the garage for, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 weeks, so there's a lot of moisture in there. Not only that, I'm gonna be opening the system up some more. So what I was doing right now is putting the vacuum on the system and testing all the fittings that I've already put back together. I ended up buying an O-ring kit from Rock Auto. That's just an air conditioning service kit. And I ended up replacing all the O-rings on the switches. So this switch, and also new O-rings here, and new O-rings on the 2 fittings for your quick disconnects. Now that there's a vacuum on it, that's also supposed to clean out any moisture that may have collected in the system while I had it open. And I'm probably just gonna let it sit here for the day or longer and basically cook off any moisture. And then I will get looking into taking apart everything up front. Once I know everything back here is all good and all repaired, I'll put everything back together, all the hoses back on, get the wheel well back in here, get the bodywork back on. Then I'm going to move to the front and take care of the radiator and the condenser and that one cooling fan motor. That repair, I think, will go much, much quicker. With any luck, this car will be back on the road next weekend. So I'll go for a ride with you guys once it's back on the road. So we had left a vacuum on our AC system to go ahead and test all of our new O-rings at each of these junctions to ensure that stuff was all good, and to also ensure that our evaporator, our new evaporator, which is inside here, was not leaking. I had put a new O-ring here. You can actually see a little bit of the green. New O-rings here, here, and over on the accumulator, or whatever they call that. Anyways, all the new O-rings are holding good for that half of the system. So I've gone ahead and started to reassemble this whole wheel well area here. I put the support back in. I'm at the point where I'm going to go ahead and reconnect the cooling system. Now take note, see how I put that paste on our fittings for our heater core? That's silicone paste. That stuff works wonders with reinstalling hoses, or in the future, for whatever reason, God forbid, I have to remove those hoses. Life will be so much better because I put a little bit of that silicone paste on there. Well worth it. I'd recommend it. Other things to take note of if you're doing the same job. See that ground connection down there? You know, my car had no problems. Everything electrically was working just fine, but that ground was painted. So I went ahead and hit it with a wire brush, and then that exact same silicone paste, that is designed to prevent oxidation, and it's great for anywhere where you're going to have an electrical contact to try and prevent that from ultimately oxidizing or rusting or whatever you'd want to call it. So I've got those 2 bolts up top installed, you know, right next to that ground. You can see those 2 bolts. Those were not really too hard to install. They're the bolts for this support. And I also installed the ones up here. The one that was a little bit tricky though, let's see if you guys can see it, right down there. But even then, that wasn't too bad because I've got the whole inner wheel well removed, so I was able to reach it. Take note, that bolt is longer than the 2 on the top. So I installed that one first, tightened it all the way, then tightened the 2 on the top. So this way that one wasn't fighting the 2 on the top, and that bracket fits nice and flush against the frame. We're going to continue with installation of our coolant reservoir. Something else I want to show you guys, while we happen to have just fantastic access to all of our suspension, here's the #1 steel wool pad. I'm not sure why, but a previous owner painted the suspension in this, which, you know, those of you who know C4s know that this is probably one of the nicest looking suspension setups ever in a car. Now, I know that the newer Corvettes probably have sharper looking suspension. I don't own any of those. So I'm comparing this suspension to that you would find, for example, in my 66 Mustang or my 73 Pontiac Grand Am. You know, this, once it's all cleaned up, looks like $1 million. I don't know what paint they use, but this is actually on here pretty good. I might switch to a higher grit steel wool. They painted over the A-arms and my beautiful Bilstein shocks. I don't know what they were thinking. Okay, we have removed our accumulator dryer assembly, and we're working on getting our entire radiator and condenser out. You can see the black O-rings are still on the AC lines. Those are going to all be replaced with green ones. That's part of the R12 to R134 conversion process. Removing this assembly, I'm trying to remove the entire thing with the fans. I have the fans unplugged. I still have the bottom radiator hose connected. But once I pull that, I think the whole thing will just lift right out. But I'm not sure. I mean, that feels really heavy for something that's just going to lift right out. So I don't know if I've missed some screws or what's going on with it. Once it's out though, wait till you guys see the condition of this radiator. I figured out what it was that was giving me some resistance as I was trying to lift that whole assembly out. This is part of the radiator shroud. See how it's pinned underneath this bracket? So you just have to pull this bracket out. And then I think what I'm going to do is just get all of this out of the way. Because you could see right here is our shroud. So I'd have to lift through this. I'd kind of have to push the whole shroud, radiator, and condenser that direction, and then straight up. And that's going to be kind of tight. So the more stuff I can get out of the way to give me more access for lifting, the better. So I'll get this out of the way, get this out of the way, and it should come out fairly easily at that point. And when I'm putting it all back together, that's when I'm going to put this protective screen over this section to try and prevent debris from getting up there and damaging stuff. I had joked about, wow, what was this Corvette driven through to cause all this? Taking off that front air dam, look at all the gravel and pebbles and crap that came out of there. It's almost like this guy took this thing off-roading, which, you know, that's totally reasonable. You know, when I first got my Corvette, first thing I wanted to do was, let's take this dirt tracking. And to give you guys an idea of how that impacted underneath here, pretty severe. So, I'm going to continue with the removal now. Okay, I started trying to lift out the entire assembly, and I noticed something. If you look right yonder, there's a connector. And that wire actually goes into this entire shroud assembly. So I need to unplug that connector before I lift, or I'm going to break something, which is just going to delay me, because ultimately I'm going to have to fix that in addition to the repairs I'm already doing. But as you can see, it is lifting out. It's not light. Part of the weight might be because it's rubbing some other assemblies down there and things like that. And I think also part of it might be the radiator could be full of, I don't know, 20 years worth of, let's just say crud. Struggled a little bit. I was initially trying to lift out from the passenger side, and I was getting hung up on stuff over here on the driver's side, so I switched over to this side and lifted out. And really what was catching me the most was this sort of stuff, just rubbing on here. So once I lifted from this side, got it out in this angle, now it's nice and free. It'll come right out. I just wanted to show you guys how that was working. It does actually look like I probably could have removed just this top half if I had undone these three and pulled it, but ultimately I'm replacing everything inside there anyways. So taking all of it out as one lump sum makes sense to me. I probably should have looked this up on the internet in advance. I did not have to take the entire radiator assembly out. All I had to do that I had not done with it in the car was disconnect. There's 6 7mm head fasteners, 3 on each side. And then I also had to disconnect on the fan side. There was 3 fasteners up here, 10mm, holding it in. That was it. Oh, it actually looks like 4th. It looks like one of the fan ones was also holding it. And now this entire assembly lifts off. Now, in my case, I'm actually kind of glad I did take the whole thing out. It looks like what did all that damage was rocks. I am just flabbergasted by the sheer number of rocks and size of rocks that are inside this entire assembly. I don't know, I'm half wondering if maybe what happened is the previous owner went off-road on accident, like ditched it, you know, and it just took all these rocks into it because it's in tough shape. All right, now that this is over, the big reveal. Let's see what kind of condition all this is in. All right, this just lifts right out. Okay, so really, this isn't that bad. I mean, it looks like this side has some bent fins and the bottom is really torn up, but the rest of it's not too shabby, but whatever, I got a new one anyhow. Look at our radiator. Holy moly. Here's the one fan that was working. This fan, my thought is, doesn't even work anymore. And then all the rocks and crap, they're still in there. Wow, a lot of debris. And then if you look at, so here's the side that worked, right? Covered in all that crap. Take a look at this. There's the side that didn't work. This, I believe, was caused by a rock that got caught between the fan and the radiator. And the fan, actually right now the fan feels fine. But because I have a new motor, I'll be replacing it anyhow. And then here is what's left inside here. What do we have here? Piece of plastic. Let's see, I'm not seeing any $100 bills falling out of here, but oh, a cigarette butt. That actually probably could have been interesting. That could have caught it on fire, you know, with all the leaves and stuff. All right, so the rubber and stuff is still in here. There's, you know, there's some dirt and look, there's still rocks caught in here. Yeah, I don't know what this guy drove through, but that was the root cause of all the damage in that radiator. See the rocks all right here? What in the heck? And these are pretty good sized rocks, you know? Boulders, if you will. So I'm going to clean all that crap out, put our new radiator and our new AC condenser. Hopefully everything fits just fine. Oh, and a new motor for our fan. Something else I want to point out, just so you guys, if you're doing this at home, don't forget to do it. These rubber isolators, these are what your radiator and your condenser sit on. Well, I wanted to take them out because I noticed they weren't sitting quite right. And there was all kinds of mud and muck and just, you know, garbage stuck in the bottom of them. So, you know, it's really easy. You just pull them out and then you just scrape all this junk out of here. So when you install your new hardware, everything fits okay. You don't end up pinching things and bending fins and having problems in the future. You know, it's one of those steps, you know, like if you're restoring a Jeep, for example, with used rusty brake lines, you might want to replace them instead of just painting them. This is like replacing the lines. We're going to go ahead and just clean this all out. So this way our rubber isolators and the new hardware that sits on top of them fits in perfectly. And when I reassemble this, I'm not going to do it the way I took it out. I'm going to put the bottom half back in the car, and then I'm going to set everything in nice and gentle so I don't run the risk of bending anything. So replacing the fan motor is pretty easy. Something to keep in mind, the new fan motor came and it was bare metal. So I just painted this. I just used a little engine enamel, and then I will go ahead and bolt this into place. Also, when you're taking your fan off, there's a warning right on the fan. but you want to follow it. Might be hard for you guys to read that, but it says left hand thread turn nut, and then it shows clockwise to remove. So, you know, left hand thread, you go this way to tighten, you go this way to loosen. So it's a little different than what everyone's used to. That was a 13 millimeter hex, and it looks like we've got two 13 millimeter hexes also holding, three 13 millimeter hexes holding our motor into the housing. Pretty simple. So before we end up putting our radiator and everything back in, I want to pull the AC compressor. Don't make the same mistake I did. I started taking this apart and I took this bolt out and this bolt, and then I realized, wait a minute, the compressor bolts, this is a bracket. No need to take them out. Looks like just get these 4 bolts and we're good to go. Save yourself some time and just take this plastic piece out of the way in advance. And the reason I want to do the AC compressor now, before I start putting the radiator and everything back in, is because I want a good access to our belt tensioner. You know, that's it right down there, right here. And I want a good access to our belt tensioner right here. And it's a lot easier to be able to reach my arm in where the radiator and stuff normally would be. So the whole point of pulling our AC compressor out, first off, we need to replace our O-ring or gasket or whatever it's called for both of those lines. Also the oil that's in this style air compressor won't work with R134. I need to put the new style oil. When I say new style oil, this is what I'm talking about. It's probably not actually a new style. It's PAG, Premium Polyalkyl Glycol. That's the right oil for it. And the reason I have to do this, you have to do it anyways. I guess it has something to do with how the refrigerant and the compressor react and keeping that properly lubricated. But I had an 88 Corvette that somebody had done some work and they converted the air conditioning system to R134. And that air compressor made noise all the time, like clunking and just like noise that just drove me nuts. I don't want that to happen here. So I'm going to put the correct oil in it. And the only way that I know to drain this oil is to take the compressor out and dump it upside down and then top it back off. Now when you take these studs out, keep in mind this one is longer than the other 3. And we've already covered this before, but anti-seize, it's your friend. Live it, learn it, love it. So we anti-seized everything up, and we'll just go ahead and run the hardware in, and I will do the actual oil change over on a workbench. Oh yeah, that one's really benefiting from the little anti-seize. All right, we've gone ahead and we put our PAG oil inside our Denso compressor. The weird thing is, when I took this all apart and poured it into that cup, not one drip of any kind of mineral oil or any fluid came out of this. I did the same thing with the old accumulator or dryer. No oil came out of there either. So I'm not sure what happened, but it seems to me that this system was lacking in lubrication. So what I did, you know, I did a lot of research online. I couldn't find a real solid answer for exactly how much oil is supposed to go inside this. It looks like the entire system takes 8 ounces. And on the Denso website, it breaks it out. It says that the compressor needs like 5 ounces, and then like, you know, there'd be 1 ounce in the hoses, like 3 ounces, or 2 ounces, I guess, and the evaporator. And I thought about it. I was like, well, maybe if I just put like 7 ounces total inside the compressor, and the way I did it, I just put it up on end, and then I used, see how you got the S and the D, suction and discharge. I just poured the oil into the suction side while slowly rotating the compressor. When I say slowly, note how there's green oil everywhere. It really pumps out of that discharge side pretty hard. It like splashed and almost like went right in my eyes. So be careful when you do that. Anyways, I got about 7 ounces in there. We're going to try it. We're going to see how it works out. I think that this compressor will just distribute oil throughout the system evenly. This whole system's going back together pretty good, right? And what had happened is I had screwed the replacement quick disconnect fitting on our brand new accumulator slash dryer. And when I went to hook up my vacuum pump for the air conditioning system, you know, this is this setup here, I couldn't open this valve. You know, it felt like it was up hard against something. So I took this out, and if you look inside there, look how the Schrader valve is flattened or damaged or crushed or whatever you'd want to call it. And then look at this one. See how in the center you see that Schrader valve not damaged? This one doesn't have the O-ring, so I'm not going to use that one. But what it was, inside our new dryer, I didn't even think about it, but there is a Schrader valve that has to come out when you're going to install the quick disconnect. So here it is. Now it's out. Now I can install a quick disconnect. Other items to note that I was not real pleased with. So what I want to do is I want to take this, just throw it on the garage floor. So this way, maybe in a month or two, I can pick it out of a tire. So something else that I wanted to note that kind of bothered me a little bit. Here is our replacement radiator. Radiator and our condenser, they went in real nice. The condenser fittings, you know, you always want to make sure you pre-oil them and put some anti-seize on them. Of course I did. The radiator irritated me a bit. The problem is, this is only 1-inch core. The factory one, the one that came out of it, that was like a 1 3/8 inch core. So, you know, this seems to me like it would be diminished capacity. But on Rock Auto, it said that this was the original size, and this was like the expensive one. It was like $200. So that bothered me. And then the other thing that bugs me, take a look at our fitment. You know what? Here, let me show you on the other side. Much better. Take a look at our top hose. Let's walk around the car. And we're here. Okay, take a look at our top hose. Hey, that looks pretty good, right? I got the factory clamp back on there and everything. Look at this crap. Not good. Now, I haven't put any fluid in the system yet, but I think I might have a leak. That kind of bothered me. It would appear to me that the inlet and outlet ports on this radiator are smaller diameter than the original ones. So the original hoses are fine, but I'm going to have to put the conventional style hose clamp on there, or I guess I could put a fuel injection style one. But, you know, I mean, because I bought the expensive radiator that was supposed to be the factory fit, I expected that, and that's not what I got. So I was a little disappointed in that as well. We put a little vacuum on our system, and it is not holding. You can actually see it coming down, and I can hear where it's leaking from, of all places. It's this switch right here. Great news, we finally found our leak in our air conditioning system. What it was, right here you can see we have our manifold gauges. They're both sitting pretty at close to -30 inches, and they've been that way all night. What it was, you know, I ended up having to take every fitting back apart. I had a problem with the quick connect that's screwed into here because I didn't realize it, but the brand new one, the brand new accumulator came with a valve stem already in it. So when I screwed the quick disconnect in, I damaged both the quick disconnect and the accumulator valve stem. So I pulled that valve stem out, put a new quick disconnect on, I ended up cross-threading it. So that was a concern. So I undid it and redid it several times until it was threaded properly. But I was still losing manifold vacuum, and it would take 10 or 15 minutes and slowly drain down. And ultimately what I ended up doing was breaking apart every other fitting, all the fittings that I had installed to see where I had an issue. And where I found it was the one switch that I had messed with multiple times. As you can see, all the dye down there from the oil. When I did the O-rings, I made sure to dip each O-ring in fresh oil. So this way I didn't run the chance of tightening dry on it and ripping or slicing it. But it didn't seem to make a difference. This switch with plastic threads, I could see a piece of the O-ring sticking out. What happened was the O-ring had gotten pinched between the switch and the threads for this tubing. So that was my leak. I replaced that, good to go. And as far as like replacing it and the difference, oh my gosh, you could actually hear a difference in my vacuum pump. So when I had a vacuum leak, I'll show you guys. All right, let me open this. And we'll open this. So in theory, there's a little bit of a vacuum leak inside there right now, right? So listen to the pump, and you'll hear a difference in tone from when the pump actually runs out of anything to suck. Hear that kind of loud clicking? That loud clicking will kind of go away. And it'll become much more subdued. Here, I'll show you, just to make this quicker. Close both our valves. Listen to that pump as I close these. See? That's how the pump sounds after there's nothing for it to suck. So I'll open those back up, let it keep on sucking out whatever it's getting out of there, moisture or something. But eventually, when it's all the way down, that pump makes a different noise. So that's a way to know when that's out. Oh, and I made another mistake. Don't let this happen to you. Here I, thought I was Mr. Smarty Pants, and I decided to put everything together with this not installed. And my plan was to put everything in a little bit at a time. And it was significantly easier to install the bottom half, and then I thought put the top half. Then I noticed this little guy here. Not so easy, so I could disconnect these lines and run the risk of damaging those fittings, or I could just do a little bit of and just cut this right off, save some weight. And the other mistake I made, these all fell out. They stick in from the bottom, and that was what you could thread onto. So this side, for example, I have nothing to thread into. So I'm gonna have to loosen this back up and get at least one of these down there to hold this down. So don't make the same mistake I made. Make sure you have all these installed. So there should be 2 on this side, and I believe there's 2 or 3 on the other side. Yep, there's 1. And it looks like there's only 1 on this side. And then there's just a big nut that goes there. I know I've mentioned it before, but I cannot emphasize this enough. Pro tip. Anytime you're putting anything back together that you actually care about, take the 2 seconds to put a little anti-seize on your parts. This probably helped me immensely just this past weekend when I was at Carlisle and I had to replace that clutch fan. When I had pulled that fan off to install the new radiator, I made sure to put anti-seize on all 4 bolts. Had I not done that, I'm not sure I would have even been able to break that free with the tools that I had with me. So, it's just these little bits of effort that make a big difference in the long run. Another bit of knowledge might help you guys out. So we're gonna try and put a screw fastener into the frame right down there. You can't quite see the hole, but it is down there, I can assure you. There it is. Just to pull this bracket over just a little ways. There we go. So we're gonna have to stick our tool down into there with our screw on the end of it. Well, we're gonna drop that. So in order to prevent ourselves from dropping that, take our old paper towel that we were using to clean whatever off. We'll rip a little piece of it off, like so. Just tear some of that off, boom. And then we'll just stick this right here, and we will just jam our fastener into our socket. So this way it has a little bit of a tight fit, so it can't fall off on us. There. It's like a screw starter, except for bolts. So we're nearing completion with this job. Everything's pretty much together. We've got one more step before we get this back down on the ground. That is to install some sort of protection for our new radiator and our new condenser. So I had read online that the shrewd move is to buy gutter guard, which is what I did. I'm what you would call a big spender. So I bought 2 different styles of gutter guard, and I figured I'd hold them up and see which ones I liked best. But, just looking at our little gap here, I'm just eyeballing this. I'm gonna guess we got about 28 5/8 between the 2, so I'll have to cut the gutter guard to fit. And what I think would work best is if I install it kind of like yonder. Boom. What we have to do here is a little precision fabrication to ensure an airtight seal. So this originally had like a nice curve to it. All we had to do to get that curve out of it was initially a little metal work. Get a hold of it with these and do a little bending. And then just a little smoothing over. Oh, yeah, precise. That's what I'm talking about. Airtight, airtight. And then for our screw hole, here's the screw that's going to go in the bottom of the car. It's going to pinch this between the existing air dam and the actual bracket for the radiator. Well, we're going to want to get a bit that's about slightly bigger than that. So, winner, winner, chicken dinner. All right, let's do a little drilling, little fabrication. Got to be very careful, protect the eyes. All right, seems okay to me. Probably should do a pilot hole. Ah. I think I should have done a pilot hole. That walked pretty far. That'd be all right. It's precision. There we go, finished product. I ended up using 2 number 8 screws, stainless. They're not going anywhere, right into the original screw holes for the access for the fog lights. And that's it. I mean, a little bit of an air gap, but that covers at least 90% of that whole gap there. So that should protect our hardware behind there. And it's not going anywhere. And as far as, you know, visibility from with the car on the ground, I'll show you later, but you can't see anything. All right, we got everything back together except for this piece of weather strip, which I lost. At some point, I will find it, but there's no point in waiting for that. I just did one more quick vacuuming of the AC systems. That should be good to go. Coolant's in it, oil's in it. One mistake I made, which cost me a few minutes, there is a connector underneath here for low coolant level. So I put everything together and I had a connector just hanging down here with nowhere to plug it in. It took me a minute to realize that there was a hidden connection underneath here, so don't let that happen to you. Well, all right, let's turn the key on and see what's going on. I'm assuming we'll have some idiot lights, but I'm not sure what. I mean, it's hard to tell because it's been sitting for so long. Wow, smells like a new car. All right, let's see. Ooh, jeez, I don't know it's being so tight. This is what happens when you start driving around a 69 Lincoln, all of a sudden everything else feels real small. There we go. All right, that's better. Oh, you know what it is also? I have got the wheel tilted down from when I was working on everything. All right, let's see here. Let's crank it up. We're still adding our first can of refrigerant, but as you can see, our compressor has started spinning. So that proves that, okay, I added between 5 and 7 ounces of oil directly to the compressor suction side over on the bench. That I was nervous that that was no good. I was nervous that the compressor might seize, but no, it seems to be working good. Still on its first can of refrigerant. One cooling fan has turned on. The left cooling fan's on. The right one has not come on yet. My temperature, yeah, the right one hasn't come on yet. My engine temp is staying pretty low. It looks like that driver's side fan is coming on at like 205, and then it drags the engine right down at the temperature. We're down to 192. We're just sitting here idling. It's like 63 degrees ambient. So that's not bad. Previously, I think that this used to continually warm up until both the fans would kick on, but I don't know for sure. All right, this car's restored to service, but it still has issues. The secondary cooling fan never turns on, and you know, I read online it should turn on as soon as you turn on the air conditioning. So I did take a look. It has its own fuse under the hood. Fuse is good. So, and the motor's brand new. I suspect that's probably fine. secondary fan down there is not spinning. That's pretty cold, not freezing. That's hot, which makes me think the compressor's working. That's still pretty warm. See how the compressor's not cycling though? That doesn't seem right. Maybe the system's overcharged. So troubleshooting our fans, we got our primary fan relay, secondary fan relay. Primary is on right now, so if I unplug this, it should shut off. All right, who wants to go for a ride? I know I do. So this car repair went like a lot of car repairs. I fixed a lot of the stuff that was broken. I did not fix the one item that I was supposed to fix. This was supposed to fix the service ride control light. Did not. So, you know, in the process, I ended up changing what? The radiator, the AC evaporator, condenser, dehydrator, oil, both engine oil and AC oil. And in the end, I found more problems. My secondary cooling fan, which is a brand new motor that we just installed, does not work. Also the air conditioning, like right now it's blowing lukewarm. If I get driving though, this blows like ice cold. So I'm not really sure what's up there. It looks like my high pressure fitting that I installed isn't working, because when I put that fitting in the system, it doesn't seem to actually be breaking into the system. So I'm not sure what happened, but I'm not going to open the system up to replace it again. My low pressure side pressure when I'm, you know, at speed is right around, I think it's right around 50 psi. And when I'm idling, it's like 70, which makes me think the system is probably kind of full. But the weird thing is the compressor never turns off. It just stays on the whole time. So it's almost like it's not building pressure, or at least not as much as it should be. So like right there, it started a little cold. So, you know, we'll put some miles on it and see what happens. It's also a great opportunity for me to show you guys how it runs. I do have to have the radio turned off, unfortunately, because of YouTube gets all upset about the copyrights. However, I can tell you this. I just put those Polk speakers in as part of this particular job. It's something I did off camera. I had kicker speakers back there, 6x9s, and it sounded really not great. So I put the Polk ones in just to see what happened. And when we're talking difference in price, the kickers that were there are something like 80 bucks, 6x9, 3-ways. Those Polk ones are like 200 bucks. And I've never bought speakers that expensive. Didn't really know what to expect. Now that I've done it, I don't know if I could ever go back. I mean, they really sound great. So it's a shame I can't share that with you. It's okay though. You get to listen to the sweet sound of this engine purr. All right, so we took the car, we put it up on ramps. I took a look underneath to make sure the secondary fan was plugged in. It is. Everything looked fine down there. So I came up to the relay side. It's a little bit of a pain in the neck to work on these things with them actually installed. So I went ahead and unscrewed them. That's just these two little 10mm head bolts. Look, anti-seize. Hey! Anyways, I decided to get looking at it. So the way these are normally oriented would be like yonder. Primary, secondary. Secondary is the one that's not working. I swapped the two, fired it up, no good. So I was like, all right. Clearly the relay was good, because when I swapped them, you know, the problem stuck around, you know what I mean? So the primary still worked, even when being fed by the different relay. So the relay was good. So basically we took our suspected bad relay, hooked it to our primary circuit, and everything worked. So that proved our suspected bad was good. So the next step was, all right, here's our power coming in, right? Here's our secondary relay, power coming in. This right here, blue and white, that is a switched ground coming from the ECU, or the computer, engine control unit computer. So that's what actually tells the relay to come on and off. So my attempt here, I bypassed the relay just to make sure that the fan and circuit's good, just by jumping these two together. Which, you know, if you see me do that it works. So we know our fan is good, we know our circuit is good. It's clearly on the controls side. So on the control side, our ground is switched. This, I think, is supposed to be keyed hot. There is a fuse for it. I thought I checked it, but I guess I could double check. But yeah, watch this. So we got the It's all right. Here's our okay. Take two. All right. Here's our fan connection. We have an alligator clip connecting our two alligators together. Here's our power. See? New fan motor blows perfect. So, we know that's all good. Now I'm actually curious about this one. Let's see if we have... well, our ground is switched from the ECU. Let's check that. I'm going to look this up online. When in doubt, right? I mean, ultimately, what I was going to do, if it turns out our ECU is not working, I peeled back some of our loom, and our green and white and blue and white, those are what switch the ground, which turns the relays on and off. I was just going to tie the two together, so that if the primary fan came on, so did the secondary. But ideally, I would get it working exactly the way the factory had it. So let's take a look and see what's going on with that circuit. Okay, so we've gone ahead and crimped this all together. See how we have our green and white wire? That's our signal from the ECU. This grounds. And when this grounds, it'll pick up, normally it's just the green and white relay. But now I have it hooked up to the blue and white secondary. So now it'll pick up both relays when that grounds, which is a good deal. And what we'll do, before we tuck everything back into our loom, I love loom, it's great. You can hide anything. No, I'm just kidding. I actually hate loom. A friend of mine will get that. Inside joke. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and test this. I'm going to put them back in the factory orientation just because that's the best orientation. All right, they're hooked up. Let me go ahead and fire this up. And both fans should kick on. And we should never have to worry about our temperature again. You know, if I notice it getting warm, I can just turn on the AC and it'll be good to go. Definitely have that one on. Yep, and that one. All right, both cooling fans running. Wow, now we're moving some air. That's what I'm talking about. Ooh, look how nice and clean it is in there. All right, here we are. Back in the saddle again. Great song. Those of you who don't know it, I would recommend you YouTube it. First, finish this video, but then I recommend you YouTube it. All right. Now this looks factory. That's, yep. Trusty 10mm. I like to keep those in my pocket. Actually, if you have a C4 Corvette, you should have multiple 10mm and 7mm quarter-inch drive sockets laying around because everything on these is that size, or 13. 13 and 14 are two popular ones too. All right, let me torque this. I'm just kidding. Got our torque wrench. And those were pre-anti-seized. I had already done it. All right, there we go. Restored to service. All right, I decided to wrap up that episode, but I figured out what's going on with the air conditioning. I've been cruising around with the top off. If you guys have never done this with the C4 Corvette, do it. Don't even think about it, just do it. Go get one, take it for a spin. They are a blast. The whole time I was working on it, I was a little bummed out. Just cruising around for an hour today with the top off. Well worth it. So anyways, air conditioning system. As I'm cruising around, I'm thinking about it. I'm not seeing anything on my high pressure gauge. I can't get anything to come out of the high pressure valve stem when I actually try and push on it. I would put money on it. There was a valve stem in the original tubing that needed to be removed. and I have the two valve stems crushed together, causing blockage. So I was never able to correctly vacuum the system. So there's air on the high pressure side. I put money on it that I've got a combination of air on the high pressure side and an overcharge on the low pressure side. And that's why the air conditioning's not blowing very strong. No big deal. I'm gonna go ahead and re-evacuate the system, pull that fitting off, see if my theory is correct, and then fix it. Next project that I will film is going to be the universals in the Lincoln. Don't worry, I'll probably be doing that sometime this week into next weekend. That'll be a quick, simple one. And after that, we'll move on to a clutch in our 66 Mustang. That should be pretty cool. Anyways, I hope you guys really enjoyed the episode. I know I had a blast filming it. I had even more fun. Now that I have it done, oh, awesome. You got to do it. I will see you next episode.